The diamond bracelet hit the floor with a sharp crack. Lauren stood frozen, her designer heels inches from the shattered jewels. The woman she'd just humiliated looked up calmly, brushing dust from her thrift store dress. "You might want to save those," she said quietly. "Your brother gave them to me." Before we begin, if you love stories about karma, hidden identities, and the ultimate comeuppance, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. You won't want to miss what happens when arrogance meets reality. Now let's dive in. The Hampton Grand Hotel sparkled like a jewel box that October evening, every chandelier blazing, every marble surface polished to perfection. Manhattan's elite had gathered for the annual charity gala, an event where $1,000 tickets were considered entry-level, and the real money happened in the silent auction. Women draped in couture air-kissed each other, while men in custom tuxedos discussed portfolios and politics. It was the kind of night where your net worth determined your table placement, and everyone knew exactly where they stood in the hierarchy. Lauren Westfield moved through the crowd like she owned the place, which in a sense, her family practically did. At 28, she'd spent her entire adult life in rooms like this, surrounded by wealth so casual it had become invisible to her. Her brother Christopher's billions had elevated the Westfield name to something approaching royalty in these circles, and Lauren wore that association like armor. She was on the planning committee, which gave her authority to criticize the flower arrangements, complain about the champagne selection, and generally remind everyone that standards mattered. Her friends followed in her wake, laughing at her commentary, validating every sharp observation about who wore what and who didn't belong. That's when Anna Morrison appeared in the service hallway, carrying a box of handcrafted centerpieces she'd spent 3 weeks creating. At 26, Anna had learned to make beauty from simple materials because expensive ones had never been an option. She'd taken the commission through a friend of a friend, grateful for the extra money that would help cover her mother's medical bills. The centerpieces were delicate glass votives she'd painted by hand, each one unique, each one carrying hours of careful work. She wore a simple cotton dress she'd found at a consignment shop, her hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, her face free of the heavy makeup that seemed required at events like this. She looked exactly like what she was, a working woman trying to make ends meet with talent and determination. Lauren spotted her immediately, and something cold flickered in her eyes. Anna clearly didn't belong here, not dressed like that, not carrying a cardboard box through the main corridor. Without hesitation, Lauren's heels clicked sharply against the marble as she crossed the space, her expression already set in judgment. "Excuse me," Lauren's voice cut through the ambient noise, sharp enough to turn heads. "This is a private event. The staff entrance is around back." Her tone carried that particular brand of condescension that wealthy people sometimes mistake for authority, each word dripping with the assumption that she was dealing with someone too stupid to read signs. Anna looked up, startled but polite. "I'm not a guest. I'm just delivering these centerpieces for the silent auction tables. I was told to bring them to the event coordinator." Lauren's perfectly shaped eyebrows arched with theatrical disbelief. She glanced at the box, then back at Anna's dress, her worn flats, the absence of jewelry or designer accessories. Everything about her assessment took mere seconds, but it was thorough and dismissive. "Centerpieces?" She laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "These were supposed to be delivered hours ago by a professional vendor. You're clearly confused, or you're trying to crash this event with some story. Either way, you need to leave." Anna's cheeks flushed, but she kept her voice steady. "There must be a misunderstanding. I'm Anna Morrison. I was hired by the coordinator to create custom pieces. I have the email confirmation on my phone if you'd like to see it." But Lauren had already turned to her friends who'd gathered like sharks sensing blood in the water. "Can you believe this? She actually thinks we're going to fall for this." She turned back to Anna, her voice rising just enough to attract more attention. "Let me guess. You saw this event online, thought you'd put on your nicest goodwill dress, and try to mingle with people who actually belong here? Maybe catch a rich husband. It's pathetic, honestly." The cruelty landed like physical blows. Anna felt her throat tighten, but she refused to let this woman see her cry. Around them, other guests had begun to notice the confrontation. Phone cameras emerged discreetly from designer handbags. This was the kind of drama that would dominate group chats by morning. I'm not trying to crash anything, Anna said quietly, her dignity intact even as humiliation burned through her. I'm just trying to deliver my work and leave. If you just let me speak to the coordinator. Security! Lauren snapped her fingers imperiously, and two men in dark suits approached immediately. This woman is trespassing. Please escort her out and make sure she takes whatever cheap crafts she brought with her. We have standards here. Anna's hands trembled slightly as she adjusted her grip on the box, but her voice remained calm. You know, your brother wouldn't treat someone like this. The words slipped out before she could stop them, quiet but clear. Lauren's laugh was genuine this time, delighted by the audacity. My brother. Now you're name-dropping Christopher Westfield? Oh, sweetheart, that's truly desperate. What's next? Are you going to claim you know the mayor? The president? She turned to her audience, playing to them. They always try this, don't they? Mention a name they read in Forbes and hope it gives them credibility. Anna didn't respond. She simply turned and walked toward the exit, her back straight, her head high despite the whispers and laughter trailing behind her. The security guards followed at a polite distance, clearly uncomfortable with the situation but following their instructions. As she disappeared through the heavy doors, Lauren returned to her friends, already spinning the story into an amusing anecdote about maintaining proper boundaries and the audacity of people who tried to climb above their station. Honestly, the entitlement, Lauren said, accepting a fresh glass of champagne. She probably saw the event listing and thought she could just walk in off the street. This is why we have to be vigilant about these things. Her friends nodded, murmured agreement, validated her version of events. None of them questioned whether Lauren might have been wrong. None of them noticed the worried look on the actual event coordinator's face when she later discovered that Anna Morrison, the artist she'd specifically commissioned, had been forcibly removed before delivering the centerpieces that were supposed to be the evening's artistic centerpiece. 3 days later, Christopher Westfield returned from his month-long business trip to London. At 32, he'd built his fortune through a combination of brilliant innovation and calculated risk-taking, turning a modest inheritance into a tech empire worth billions. But lately, something had changed in him. His assistant noticed it first: the way he smiled at his phone, the distracted air during meetings, the fact that he'd started leaving the office at reasonable hours. Christopher had always been driven, focused, sometimes ruthless in business. But now there was a softness around the edges, a contentment that success alone had never brought him. Lauren showed up at his penthouse that evening, as she often did, bringing takeout from their favorite restaurant and ready to catch up. She sprawled on his leather sofa, kicking off her heels, launching into stories about the gala and the social dramas she'd navigated. Christopher half listened while sorting through mail, his mind clearly elsewhere. And then there was this absolutely bizarre situation with some woman trying to crash the event, Lauren said, rolling her eyes. She had this whole elaborate story about delivering centerpieces, can you imagine? Like we wouldn't notice someone dressed like they shopped at a thrift store, trying to blend in with actual society. Christopher's hand stilled on the envelope he was opening. What woman? Lauren didn't notice the edge in his voice, too caught up in her own narrative. Just some nobody. Anna something, I think she said. She actually had the nerve to mention your name, like dropping it would somehow give her credibility. I had security remove her, obviously. We can't have people thinking they can just walk into these events because they... Anna Morrison? Christopher's voice was dangerously quiet. Yes. That was it. Lauren laughed. Do you know her? Did she actually try to use knowing you as some kind of... She finally looked at her brother's face and her words died. The expression he wore was one she'd never seen before. A combination of fury and heartbreak so intense it was almost frightening. Christopher set down the mail with carefully controlled movements and pulled out his phone. Without a word, he turned the screen toward his sister. The lock screen showed a photograph. Christopher and Anna on a beach somewhere, his arm around her shoulders, both of them laughing at something off camera. The image radiated genuine happiness, the kind that couldn't be faked. Anna wore a simple sundress in the photo, her hair loose around her shoulders, her smile transforming her face into something luminous. That's Anna Morrison, Christopher said, his voice like ice. My fiancé. The word hung in the air between them, heavy with implications. Lauren's face went through a rapid series of expressions: confusion, disbelief, horror, and finally sick understanding. The takeout container slipped from her nerveless fingers, splattering noodles across the pristine hardwood floor. Neither of them noticed. You're… what? The word came out as a whisper. Christopher's jaw clenched so tightly she could see the muscle jumping. I met Anna 8 months ago at a small bookstore in Brooklyn. She was working there part-time, helping customers find books, and she recommended something that changed my entire perspective on a problem I'd been struggling with. We started talking. She had no idea who I was, no idea about the money or the company or any of it. She just saw me as Christopher, some guy who liked reading and terrible coffee and long conversations about everything and nothing. He stood up, pacing to the window, his back to Lauren. For the first time in my adult life, someone loved me for who I actually am, not what I represent. She worked 2 jobs and still found time to volunteer teaching art to kids who couldn't afford supplies. She made me laugh. She challenged my assumptions. She made me want to be a better person, not just a richer one. Christopher, I didn't know, Lauren started, but he cut her off. I proposed to her 2 months ago. We kept it quiet because she was terrified of exactly this, of being judged and dismissed by people who think designer labels equal worth. I told her my family wasn't like that. I promised her that when she met you, you'd see what I see. Someone kind, talented, genuine, and brave enough to build a life through honest work rather than inheritance. He turned back to face his sister, and the disappointment in his eyes was worse than anger. I was going to introduce her properly at our family dinner next week. I wanted it to be special, welcoming, a moment where she'd feel accepted into our family. Instead, you humiliated her publicly, had her thrown out like garbage, and apparently turned it into entertaining gossip for your friends. Lauren felt tears burning her eyes, but they were nothing compared to the crushing weight of realization settling over her. How was I supposed to know who she was? That's exactly the problem, Lauren. Christopher's voice cracked slightly. It shouldn't have mattered who she was. You saw someone you perceived as beneath you and decided that gave you the right to be cruel. You didn't ask questions. You didn't show basic human decency. You just assumed the worst because she wasn't wearing the right costume for your world. The silence that followed was devastating. Lauren wanted to defend herself, to explain, to somehow make this right, but every word that came to mind sounded hollow. She'd seen the video someone had posted online, watched herself performing cruelty for an audience, and now she couldn't unsee it. The woman in that video was someone she barely recognized, someone she'd somehow become without noticing the transformation. Does Anna know? About us? About this conversation? Lauren asked finally. I called her after the gala when she came home crying, Christopher said. She told me what happened before I could tell her about the surprise dinner I'd planned. She said maybe it was better this way, that she got to see the real Westfield family values before making a mistake. It took me 3 hours to convince her that you don't represent who we are, who I am. And honestly, Lauren, I'm not sure I convinced her. I'm not sure I convinced myself. Over the following days, Lauren did something she'd never done before. She actually investigated someone without the filter of prejudice. She hired a discreet researcher, not to dig up dirt, but to understand who Anna Morrison truly was. The report that came back felt like reading about someone from another planet, someone whose values and choices were so foreign to Lauren's experience that they might as well have spoken different languages. Anna had graduated summa cum laude from a state college on a full scholarship, studying art history despite knowing it wouldn't lead to a lucrative career. She'd turned down higher-paying jobs to work at the bookstore because she loved connecting people with stories. She created her handcrafted pieces not as some trendy side hustle, but because beauty mattered to her, and she wanted to share it with people who couldn't afford gallery prices. She volunteered 15 hours a week teaching art to underprivileged children, many of whom saw her as the only stable adult presence in their lives. Her mother had multiple sclerosis, and Anna worked 2 jobs to help cover treatments that insurance wouldn't. She had no social media presence because she valued privacy and real relationships over curated images. Every person interviewed about her said the same thing. Anna Morrison was genuinely good, the kind of person who made the world better simply by being in it. Lauren watched the video of their confrontation again, really watched it this time. She saw Anna's quiet dignity, the way she tried to explain despite the humiliation, the careful control that kept her from crying in front of the cameras. She saw herself, imperious, dismissive, performing cruelty like it was a skill to be admired. Her friends' laughter in the background sounded different now, hollow and ugly. The comments supporting her seemed less like validation and more like an echo chamber of people who'd lost touch with basic humanity. The guilt hit her in waves, each one stronger than the last. This wasn't just about embarrassing herself or even hurting a stranger. She'd wounded someone her brother loved, someone who by all accounts deserved only kindness. And in doing so, she'd revealed something about herself that she could no longer ignore. She'd become exactly the kind of person she'd always claimed to despise, someone who measured worth in dollars and status instead of character. Finding Anna wasn't difficult. Lauren went to the bookstore in Brooklyn on a Tuesday afternoon, her designer clothes feeling like a costume in the cozy space filled with readers and the smell of old paper. She watched from behind a shelf as Anna helped a young boy pick out his first chapter book, her patience infinite as he sounded out titles and asked questions about every cover. When they finally selected one, Anna slipped a bookmark she'd made into the pages, a small gift the boy wouldn't even notice until he got home. When the store was empty, Lauren approached the counter. Anna looked up, and recognition flickered across her face, followed by something guarded and sad. "Hello, Lauren." "Hi." Lauren's carefully rehearsed speech evaporated. "I know I'm probably the last person you want to see." "You're not far off," Anna said quietly, but without malice. "What do you want?" "To apologize. Really apologize. Not the kind where I make excuses or explain why I thought what I thought." Lauren's hands twisted together, a nervous gesture she usually controlled. "I was completely inexcusably wrong. Not because you're engaged to Christopher, not because you turned out to be someone important, but because I had no right to treat another human being that way, regardless of who they were or why they were there." Anna studied her for a long moment. "Your brother talks about you constantly, you know. He loves you so much. He told me stories about when you were younger, before the money changed everything, when you were the one defending kids who got picked on at school. He said you were the kindest person he knew." The words hit harder than any accusation could have. "I don't know when I stopped being that person," Lauren whispered. "Or maybe I do know, and that's worse. Somewhere along the way, I started believing that money and status made me better than other people, that my world was the only one that mattered." "I grew up poor," Anna said softly. "Not cute poor, not we had to budget poor, but genuinely didn't always know if we'd make rent poor. My dad left when I was 8, and my mom worked 3 jobs until her diagnosis. I know what it's like to be invisible to people like you, to have security guards follow you in stores, to see disgust in someone's eyes because your clothes aren't new." She paused, her voice steady but her eyes bright with unshed tears. "But I also learned that money doesn't define worth. My mom taught me that. The teachers who stayed late to help me with scholarship applications taught me that. Every person who showed me kindness when they had nothing to gain from it taught me that." "I'm so sorry," Lauren said, and meant it more than she'd ever meant anything. "Not just for what I did, but for confirming every fear you had about meeting Christopher's family. You were right to be scared, and that's a terrible thing for me to have to admit." Anna's expression softened slightly. "He's planning a family dinner." "Did he tell you?" "He mentioned it might not happen now, because of me." "It's still happening," Anna said, "because I love him enough to try, and because one person's cruelty doesn't define an entire family. But I won't lie to you, Lauren. I'm terrified, and I'm not sure how to get past what happened." "I don't expect you to forgive me," Lauren said honestly. "I just wanted you to know that I see you now. Really see you. And I'm going to try to be better, not to fix this, because I know it can't be fixed that easily, but because you're right. I used to be better than this, and somewhere I lost my way." The family dinner happened on a Friday evening at Christopher's penthouse. Lauren arrived early, her stomach in knots, carrying a donation check to Anna's children's art program. Not as an apology gift, she'd been careful about that, but as genuine support for work that mattered. When Anna arrived with Christopher, the tension was palpable, but something had shifted. Lauren asked real questions and actually listened to the answers. She shared stories about her own struggles with purpose and meaning, vulnerabilities she usually kept hidden behind designer armor. When their mother made a subtly dismissive comment about state colleges versus Ivy League education, Lauren surprised everyone, including herself, by firmly redirecting the conversation and highlighting Anna's academic achievements. Later, when the others were occupied, Lauren and Anna found themselves alone on the terrace overlooking the city lights. The silence between them was less hostile now, more uncertain. "Christopher told me you used to volunteer at a children's hospital," Anna said quietly, "before you got so busy with society events and committees." Lauren nodded, surprised he'd remembered. "I did. I loved it, actually. Somewhere along the way, I convinced myself that raising money for charity was more important than the actual hands-on work, that my time was better spent at galas than at bedsides." "Money matters," Anna said, "but so does presence. So does seeing people as people, not just causes or categories." She turned to look at Lauren directly. "I don't expect us to be best friends. What happened hurt too much for that. But Christopher loves you, and I love him. And that means we're going to be in each other's lives." "I don't expect forgiveness," Lauren said. "I just want you to know I'm trying to be better. The person I was at that gala, the person who hurt you, that's who I've become over the past few years. But it's not who I want to be anymore." Anna considered this, then offered something that wasn't quite a smile, but wasn't hostility either. "Then maybe Anna Morrison is exactly what this family needs. Someone to remind you what actually matters." 6 months later, everything had changed in ways both small and profound. Lauren had stepped back from most of her society commitments, finding them hollow compared to the volunteer work she'd returned to. Every Tuesday evening, she joined Anna at the children's art program, learning to see beauty in crayon drawings and construction paper collages. They weren't best friends, probably never would be, but there was genuine respect between them now, a cautious warmth that grew from shared purpose rather than forced proximity. Christopher and Anna's wedding was approaching, and Lauren was helping with preparations in a supporting role, not trying to take over, not assuming her taste mattered more than the bride's vision. She'd learned to ask instead of dictate, to listen instead of dismissing, to see worth in places she'd previously overlooked. The transformation wasn't complete, probably never would be, but it was real. She caught herself sometimes, old instincts rising up to judge someone's appearance or background, but now she recognized those thoughts for what they were, the residue of years spent valuing the wrong things. One afternoon, Anna brought her mother to meet the Westfield family. Mrs. Morrison arrived in a wheelchair, wearing her nicest dress from J.C. Penney, nervous but dignified. Lauren greeted her warmly, genuinely, seeing not a woman of limited means, but the person who'd raised someone extraordinary against impossible odds. They talked about art and resilience, and the fierce love that carries families through hard times. When Mrs. Morrison left, she squeezed Lauren's hand and said quietly, "Thank you for loving my daughter enough to change." The words stayed with Lauren for days. The truth was simple and complicated all at once. Dignity had never come from designer labels or exclusive invitations or the right address. It came from how you treated people when they couldn't do anything for you, when there was nothing to gain from kindness except the knowledge that you'd chosen to be decent. Lauren had spent years performing status while losing sight of substance, measuring worth in all the wrong currencies. Anna hadn't just entered her life as her brother's fiancée. She'd arrived as a mirror, reflecting back everything Lauren had become and challenging her to be better. The night before the wedding, Lauren wrote Anna a letter she'd never send, putting into words what she could never quite say aloud. She wrote about shame and growth, about privilege and blindness, about the gift of second chances when you didn't deserve them. She wrote about watching Anna with the children she taught, seeing real wealth in the way their faces lit up when she praised their work. She wrote about understanding, finally, that the best things in life, the things that actually mattered, couldn't be bought or displayed or used to elevate yourself above others. They could only be earned through the daily choice to see people, really see them, regardless of their clothes or their background, or whether they fit into your carefully curated world. She never sent the letter, but writing it changed something fundamental. The next day, standing beside Anna as her sister-in-law married her brother, Lauren felt something she hadn't experienced in years, genuine happiness that had nothing to do with status or appearance or what anyone else thought. She was simply glad that two people who loved each other had found their way to this moment, and grateful that her own worst impulses hadn't destroyed it completely. Because sometimes the people we judge most harshly are exactly the ones who can teach us what we most need to learn. Sometimes humiliation is a gift that shows us who we become and challenges us to be better. And sometimes the simple woman in the thrift store dress carries more grace and wisdom than all the diamonds in the world could ever reflect. Lauren had learned this lesson the hard way, through shame and regret, and the long road back to becoming someone worthy of her brother's love and Anna's cautious forgiveness. But she'd learned it, and that, more than any redemption arc or neat resolution, was what actually mattered. If this story touched you, if you've ever judged too quickly or been judged unfairly, drop a comment below sharing your experience. And if you believe in second chances and the power of humility, smash that like button and subscribe for more stories that remind us what really matters. Remember, the next person you meet might change your life if you're open enough to see them. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.